Well, hey, biology. Hope you're doing well when you watch this video. This video will cover the Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium, a concept in chapter 18 about evolution of populations. So let's go ahead and get started. Again, I hope you're doing well whenever you watch this. I miss seeing your smiling faces. Hope you and your family are doing well. So the Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium is a model in which allele frequencies do not change across generations. So models in science, I'm going to have a slide about it, but they help scientists understand the world and predict changes and understand changes. For a population to be at Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium, there must be, and these are a couple things that you should know, a random mating, an infinite population size, no mutation, no gene flow, and no selection of genotypes. So everything is fixed. There's no input of new alleles, there's no gene flow, there's no random mutation. So of course you're like, that doesn't happen in life, but that's the point. Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium is a model to help us understand if a population is evolving or not. So the amoeba sisters, y'all know I love the amoeba sisters, but the amoeba sisters has this great graphic, assumptions of Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium. So you need to know these 5 assumptions. There's no selection, so you know sexual selection. There's no mutation, DNA changes. There's no migration, so input of new alleles. It's a very large population, and there's just complete random mating. There is no selection or any sort of advantage at all, okay? So scientific modeling, again, helps scientists understand the world. It requires selecting and identifying relevant aspects of a situation and then using different types of models for different aims. Conceptual models, operational models, mathematical models. We've been hearing a lot about models. You know, the CDC and the WHO have been putting out models about, COVID-19. We live in Florida, of course, so we see models all the time about hurricanes. What they're doing is they're inputting data, and you have all those different spaghetti models. So all those are models in science, and Hardy-Weinberg is just another example of a model. At Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium, allele frequencies do not change. So this situation describes populations that are not evolving. Populations that are not evolving. So this is, describes an ideal condition against which the effects of these influencers can be analyzed. And we can determine if a population is changing enough to be considered evolution or not based upon the Hardy-Weinberg. So what exactly is the Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium? Well, you're going to start seeing some of these, I guess, variables or, symbols and stuff. And so it's capital A, capital A, capital A, little a, little a, little a. So that's the genotype, right? Homozygous dominant, heterozygous, homozygous recessive. But those stand for, in the Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium, I don't have a writing pad, so I'm going to try my best to do this with a mouse. And it's not working out very well. But hey, can't fault a guy for trying, I guess. So you can see that p squared equals homozygous dominant. Heterozygous is 2pq, and homozygous recessive is q squared. All these are frequencies, which means they're percentages, and they all equal to 1. There's another equation that you should know, and I'm going to show you on another slide, but I'll just go ahead and write it right now. But P, and I just want to show you how horrible I am at writing with a mouse. P plus Q equals 1. Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium is all about knowing your P's and Q's. Okay, so Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium describes populations that are not evolving. Real population data is compared to a model, so that's why we're learning this. We're going to compare real populations to this model. So here are 2 very important, and let me just write on the video here. Very important. Man, I can choose different colors. That's awesome. Let's do yellow. That probably was a horrible choice. There you go. You need to know those equations. Okay. P squared plus 2pq plus q squared equals 1, and p plus q equals 1. This little graph right here is very important. P's and q's, and they kind of tell you exactly which one stands for what. So p is the frequency of the dominant allele, q is the frequency of the recessive allele, and p squared, 2pq, and q squared are all of those homozygous dominant, heterozygous, or homozygous recessive frequencies. Okay, so it's very important that you understand those 2 situations. So let me show you a graphic here. So you have homozygous dominant, heterozygous, homozygous recessive, and then P and Q just stands for the gametes. So you can see that half of heterozygous is dominant and half of it's recessive, so they just take half and add them together and they get their P's and Q's. Here's another graphic right here. You can see that this is kind of based upon a Punnett square, of course, but inside of this you can see that there is the there's a Q squared. So roughly 20% of the population was homozygous recessive. You can see that there's roughly 24.75%, between heterozygous, both of them. So you would add those together. And then 30% roughly is homozygous dominant. And so these terms really come to life when we practice. And so you really need to practice these. I'm going to try to walk through with you a couple of problems here. Again, I'm going to do my best to write or type. I might do either one, but let's walk through some problems together. I want to walk through 3 problems with you to help you understand exactly how to solve these problems. And this will help you for future biology courses. So sickle cell anemia, when sickle blood cells aren't made correctly due to mutation, hemoglobin is not made correctly. I don't like yellow. I'm going to switch from yellow. Let's do purple or something. Purple should show up. All right. Homozygous individuals, that is completely misspelled. Individuals, I'm sorry about that, have normal blood cells that are easily infected with a malarial parasite. Okay. Thus, many of these individuals become very ill from parasite and die. Individuals homozygous for the sickle cell trait have red blood cells that readily collapse. So homozygous dominant and homozygous recessive, we're going to see, provide lower fitness. Malaria can grow in these cells, but individuals often die because of genetic defect. So however, individuals with the heterozygous condition have an advantage. They have some sickling of red blood cells, but generally not enough to cause mortality. In addition, malaria cannot survive well. And you can look up videos about this, but this is where sickle cell came from, evolved based upon the pressure of malaria in Africa. So, and there's like videos on YouTube if you want to look them up. But that's heterozygous survive better. So here's our problem. That's all like a problem. Here's our problem. If 9% of an African population is born with a severe form of sickle cell anemia, 9% is SS, okay? What percentage of the population will be more resistant to malaria because they are heterozygous? So they gave us homozygous recessive, and they're asking us to find heterozygous, okay? So what do we do with this? Well, we first got to understand what they gave us. Did they give us P squared or 2PQ, or Q squared, or did they give us P or Q? What did they give us? So let's look back at the problem here. They gave us 9% is SS. So hopefully you can see that they didn't give us an allele frequency, they gave us a genotypic frequency. So these are genotype frequencies. I'm not even gonna try. Well, I'll try. Geno, I really gotta get a writing pad, but I think they're kind of expensive. All the fancy teachers on YouTube have them. Genotypes. And these are allele frequencies. So these are allele frequencies. You need to understand this. And these are genotypic frequencies. Genotypic frequencies. Okay? So what did they give us? Well, they gave us Q squared. So what we know is that Q squared, I know I'm not doing like the correct superscript there, but Q squared is 9%, or if you write that as a decimal, 0.09. Okay, so how do we find, so your goal in solving Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium is always find P and Q first. We have to find these first. Find P and Q first. And so how would you solve, again, let me try to write this out because it's not, but Q, wow, let me erase that. Let's try again. Q squared equals 0.09. Q squared. Well, how would you solve for Q? Hopefully, from math class, you understand that I would square root both sides. Square root both sides. So when I do that, I get Q equals 0.3. Now, how do I find P? Well, I go back to my equations, which are up here. Let me close the writing pad tab. But yeah, right here. P plus Q equals 1. So if I know that Q equals 0.3, Q equals 0.3, then I know P plus Q equals 1. And so P equals, you can obviously see this, P equals 0.7. Okay, so Q equals 0.3, P equals 0.7, and so what are they asking me to find now? I got my P's and Q's, and so I can solve for anything that they're asking me for, because as long as you know P and Q, you can solve for any question that they're asking. So what percentage of the population will be more resistant because they are, here it is, heterozygous? Well, what term equals heterozygous? Well, let's go back to our equation and see that P squared plus 2PQ plus Q squared, well, which one equals heterozygous? Hopefully you can see that 2PQ equals heterozygous. And so literally it's just, you know, I used to teach math and when I taught middle school a little bit, and I used to say plug and chug, man, but that's what you do. You have two, wow, that's horrible. Let's try again. I really might have to get it right in Pat. 2P, odds are not bad too. 2PQ, and you just plug and chug. So you have 2 times 0.7 times 0.3, and that equals 0.42 or 42%. Again, it looks like I'm teaching writing, you know, like learning how to write in elementary school. But, you know, nonetheless, it's all good. You know, it's all good. I mean, the two, that looks good. But you can see here that as you got to find your P's and Q's first. That's what you have to find first in order to solve these problems. All right, so let's do another one together. Phenylketonuria, if you ever look on a packet of gum, it might say phenylketonuriacs. Warning, it contains phenylalanine, which means you can't break down phenylalanine correctly, and so it builds up in this toxic substance in the body. It's autosomal recessive, so always underline, you know, key words here. Recessive disorder results in mental retardation if untreated during the newborn period. Okay, so it really affects the brain's processing. In the United States, 1 out of 10,000 babies is born with, okay, so that's a fraction, right? 1 out of 10,000. 1 out of 10,000 babies. Okay, given this incidence, what percent of the population are heterozygous carriers of the disease? Okay, so what did they give us again? Did they give us an allele frequency or did they give us a genotypic frequency? Well, they're talking about a baby. So babies are a combination of 2 alleles making a genotype. So you have, you're made up of, 1 allele from mom, 1 allele from dad. So we're not talking alleles here, we're talking genotype. So once again, and usually it happens this way, they give you the recessive Q squared, okay? So Q squared equals that. So when you square root that, right, we're square rooting both sides here, you get Q equals 1 over 100. Okay, P then is 99 over 100, right? And so what you have here is basically 1, give or take, 1. So let's write this out. Q equals 0.01, 1 over 100. P equals 0.99. They're asking for heterozygous. So heterozygous is 2PQ. Oh, wow, that's horrible. 2PQ. So you can see plug and chug. 2 times 0.01 times 0.99. And what does that equal? Well, let me, obviously you're going to be able to use a calculator with this, but 2 times 0.01 times 0.99 equals 0.0198. So this equals 0.0198. You can round that up to 2% roughly, or 1.98%, and then you can round that up if you want to, to 2%. So roughly 2% of the population is a carrier for this, roughly 2%. All right, so let's do one more problem together as we're closing out this video, and I hope it was helpful. There are 100 students in a class. That is a ginormous class. Just imagine 100 like 9th graders, biology students in a class. That's crazy. Anyways, 96 did well in the course, whereas 4 completely blew it and totally received a grade of F. Sorry. In the highly unlikely event that these traits are genetic rather than environmental, highly unlikely is a key word there. Highly unlikely, because science repeatedly says that your work ethic is more important than what you're born with, as far as like gray matter and white matter and all that goes in the brain. So this is obviously a hypothetical problem. If these traits involve dominant recessive alleles, and if 4% of the population, again, you see what they're giving us, right? 4% of the population is homozygous recessive. So what are they asking us to do? They want us to find the frequency of the recessive allele. Hopefully you can see that that is the term Q, variable Q. The frequency of the dominant allele, well, that is P. And the frequency of heterozygous individuals, well, that is 2PQ. Okay, so let's take away the writing and let's do this together. Let me just type it out. I think it's working out better if I type it. All right, so Q squared, that's supposed to be Q squared, equals 4%. Or if you want to write that as a fraction, 0.04. Okay, you square root both sides of that, and that's 0.2. So Q equals 0.2. P plus Q equals 1. So P equals 0.8. Okay? Q equals 0.2, P equals 0.8. You can see there that we already answered the first two problems, and now we just got to plug and chug, 2PQ, right? So 2 times 0.2 times 0.8 equals, oh gosh, well, that's 0.16 times 2, so that's 0.32, or 32% of the population carries the recessive allele, the carriers. Okay, so I hope again this video was helpful to you guys. Hardy-Weinberg, equilibrium. There's so many other videos on YouTube. I assigned a few of them to you to watch for homework, of course, writing videos and stuff. But nonetheless, I hope that this was helpful. You'll have a worksheet, and we'll go over some of the answers maybe in another video as far as like that. But yeah, knowing this will help you in future courses. It'll also help you understand how scientists kind of evaluate whether populations are evolving or not. So until we talk again, guys, God bless. Keep praying, keep hoping and trusting in God. He loves you and he's crazy about you. See you later.